There is a millennial individual sitting alone in their apartment on a Saturday evening, and the phone is face down on the coffee table, and the apartment is quiet and nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. That is the specific and confusing fact about this particular Saturday evening. The week was fine. The relationship is fine. The job is manageable. The apartment is clean, which is a thing that used to feel like an accomplishment and now simply happens. The way breathing happens without producing anything in particular. The phone is face down. The millennial individual is sitting on the sofa, and the dominant feeling in the room is a kind of flat, gray, undifferentiated nothing, not sadness exactly, not boredom exactly, not loneliness exactly, but a vague absence of the feeling of being alive in a way they expected by this point in their life. To feel. 2 hours ago, they posted a photograph. The photograph was taken on Thursday at a dinner with friends, candlelight, wine glasses catching the light, everyone laughing at the precise moment the shutter clicked. The caption was a single line about being grateful for the people in your life. It has 47 likes. The dinner itself was lovely, genuinely, for portions of it. And none of that, not the likes, not the dinner, not the photograph, not the gratitude statement, has produced anything in the millennial individual that resembles what the photograph suggests they feel. They are not performing dishonestly. The dinner was good. The friends are real. The gratitude is not entirely fabricated. But there is a gap between the photograph and the person sitting on the sofa with the phone face down, and the gap has a specific texture to it that the millennial individual has stopped expecting to close. There is a name for what is happening, and it is worth introducing carefully, because the name is clinical and the experience is not. Researchers studying the psychological effects of sustained social media use on adults in their late 20s and 30s have documented a pattern they variously describe as emotional flattening, affective blunting, or hedonic dampening, a gradual reduction in the intensity and range of emotional experience associated with prolonged engagement in self-presentation. Behavior online. The mechanism is not simply that social media makes people sad, which is the blunter version of this research that gets passed around as a truism. The mechanism is more specific and more interesting. It involves the relationship between performing an emotional state and experiencing one. When a person photographs a moment and shares it, especially when the act of sharing has become habitual enough to happen reflexively, before the moment itself has fully been received, something happens to the moment's emotional content. The attention that might otherwise go toward experiencing the dinner gets partially redirected toward documenting it, framing it, selecting the right image, composing the caption, monitoring the response. The moment gets processed as content rather than as experience. And content, by definition, is something that happens outside the self and gets delivered to other people. The experience, the internal, unrepeatable, unshared version of the dinner gets abbreviated or skipped entirely in the transaction over time, and the millennial individual's relationship to social media has been running for the better part of 15 years. The abbreviation of experience in favor of its documentation becomes a habit so established it no longer feels like a choice. The phone comes out automatically. The photograph happens before the moment is noticed. The caption is composed before the feeling is felt. And what gets lost gradually, silently, is the millennial individual's access to their own interior life, not through any single decisive event, but through 10,000 small redirections of attention away from the felt experience and toward its curated external version. There is a related phenomenon that compounds this one, and it arrives through a different mechanism but produces a similar flatness. The millennial individual, scrolling through a feed populated by the curated highlights of every person they know or once knew or follow for reasons they can no longer remember, is exposed continuously to a stream of presented emotional peaks, celebrations, achievements, vacations, engagements, renovations, promotions, children's milestones, moments of stated gratitude and connection and joy. This is not, in aggregate, an accurate picture of the emotional landscape of anyone's actual life. It is the edited version, the 47 likes version, the candlelight and wine glasses version of lives that contain, like all lives, far more flatness, difficulty, and ordinary Tuesday than the feed suggests. But the nervous system does not process this stream with the critical awareness that the rational mind can apply to it when directly asked. The nervous system receives the feed as data about what other people's lives are like, and compares the incoming data against the millennial individual's own raw, unedited internal experience, not the curated version they themselves project, but the actual one with all its flatness and mundane difficulty intact. The comparison produces a specific and persistent sense of falling short, not in any articulable way, not in a way that names a specific thing they are missing, just a low ambient awareness that other people appear to be more alive, more connected, more present in their own experiences than the millennial individual currently feels. This is sometimes described as social comparison, and that description is accurate but incomplete. What makes the millennial individual's version of it distinct? distinct from the social comparison that humans have engaged in since the beginning of organized community is the scale and continuity of the exposure. Comparison with neighbors, colleagues, and friends existed long before smartphones, but the feed delivers comparison continuously in every idle moment, replacing every potential instance of simple quiet with another input about how other people's lives are being lived and how they appear to feel about them. The idle moment, the brief, empty, productive of nothing space in which the nervous system could conceivably notice what it actually feels, becomes extremely rare. And rare is, for most millennial individuals, a significant understatement. Here is what the millennial individual's average day actually looks like in terms of these empty spaces that might otherwise be available for something other than comparison and curation. The morning begins with the phone before the feet hit the floor, not because anything urgent has happened, because the habit of reaching for it is older than any deliberate morning intention and considerably more practiced. The commute or the walk to the kitchen happens with earbuds in. The lunch break, the elevator ride, the 2 minutes waiting for coffee, the time in the bathroom, the transition between tasks. Each of these becomes automatically and without decided intention a scrolling opportunity. And the evening, which in previous generations was at least sometimes a period of genuinely unmediated presence, gets divided between whatever is on the screen and the second screen in the hand. The millennial individual is not doing anything unusual by the standards of their generation and their moment. They are simply participating in an information and attention environment that has been specifically engineered by some of the most sophisticated behavioral psychology and economic incentives ever applied to a consumer product to eliminate exactly the kind of idle, unoccupied, directionless mental space in which emotional experience actually develops and gets processed. This is not incidental. The millennial individual is not failing to feel deeply because of some personal deficiency. They are operating in an environment that has systematically removed the conditions under which deep feeling becomes possible. There is a specific and under-discussed cost to the curation habit that goes beyond the flatness of one's own experience. It involves what happens to the relationship between the millennial individual and the people they are performing for. The curated self, the version projected through the feed, the caption. The carefully chosen image is not a lie, exactly. It is a selection. The best light, the best moment, the version of the self that corresponds to the story. The millennial individual most wants to be true about their life, that they are grateful, connected, present, thriving, at least sometimes. At least for 47 likes worth of evidence. The problem is that the selection, maintained consistently over years, creates a version of themselves that other people relate to, and that the millennial individual begins to relate to themselves, as though it were the complete and representative picture rather than a highlight. Relationships get conducted between curated selves rather than actual ones. Vulnerability becomes structurally difficult because the audience has been trained by years of curated content to expect a different version of the person. The gap between the performed self and the felt self becomes so established that crossing it in either direction, performing more honestly, or simply experiencing without performing, produces a specific and uncomfortable friction. The friction of a person encountering themselves directly, after a very long time spent mostly looking at their own edited version. There is something worth naming about the particular generation carrying this pattern, because the millennial individual did not arrive at it through carelessness or weakness of character. They came of age precisely when social media transformed from a novelty into an infrastructure. In their late teens and early 20s, the developmental period most associated with identity formation, when tools for broadcasting a curated self to a permanent, quantified audience became both ubiquitous and socially mandatory. The like button, introduced when most millennial individuals were in their mid-20s, operationalized social approval in a way that rewired the ordinary human need for connection into something measurable and compulsively monitorable. The millennial individual did not choose this environment. They grew into adulthood inside it. This is not an exculpation, because the behavior has real costs, but the flattening experience deserves to be understood as a structural problem rather than a personal failure of presence. The millennial individual is not the first generation to struggle with the gap between the social self and the private one. They are the first generation to have had that gap industrialized. The recovery from this pattern does not look dramatic from the outside, and that is appropriate, because the damage was not dramatic from the outside either. It looks like leaving the phone on the other side of the room during dinner, not as a rule or a detox, but simply because the dinner is worth receiving in full. It looks like occasionally arriving somewhere, a walk, a conversation, a quiet evening, and not photographing it, sitting with the mild discomfort of an experience that exists only for the person having it. It looks like noticing over time that the experience is not curated, tend to produce more of what the curated ones were supposed to suggest. That the dinner not photographed often leaves a clearer, longer lasting impression. That the feeling of being present at something, the actual texture of the evening, the light. The conversation is most available when the attention that would have gone to documenting it stays inside the experience instead. This is a small, incremental, easily reversed set of practices. The phone remains available. The impulse to document does not disappear. What changes slowly and unevenly is simply the ratio of experienced moments to documented ones, and with it, gradually, the return of a more textured interior life. The flatness was never simply a symptom of too much posting. It was a symptom of too few moments allowed to be fully inhabited. That is a ratio that can change, one quiet Saturday evening at a time. The millennial individual sitting on the sofa with the phone face down is not in crisis. They are in the ordinary aftermath of a generation's ordinary relationship with an attention economy that was built to extract rather than to offer anything back. The 47 likes are real. The dinner was real. The gratitude in whatever incomplete form it exists is real. But the quiet on the sofa is also real. And it has been waiting patiently and without announcement. In every moment, the phone was not face down. For the millennial individual to notice it is there, put the phone down. Not as a prescription. Not as a fix. Just for the next few minutes, as an experiment. See what it feels like to simply be in the room. Thanks for watching. If the flatness felt familiar, leave a comment. And maybe put the phone down before you do.